Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mindfulness Monday, August 31st, also the birthday of my dear husband. So,
Mm.
hello to all of you, and I'm so glad that you can connect with us here today. You know, when I think of how much time has passed since the beginning of the pandemic, it's hard to believe that we're going into September tomorrow. Yes, September. It's already going to be September. For many people, time isn't moving fast enough to get on the other side of this extremely challenging, unprecedented time. And I know how eager we are to get on the other side of this, to sort of reconnect, if you will, or get a sense of normalcy, some semblance of normalcy, and no longer have to refer to this time as the new normal when there's nothing seemingly normal about it. I refer to this time as an opportunity for personal transformation. And as difficult as it is, we can still use this time not just wishing for better days ahead, which we all want, but to face the difficulties and challenges we're experiencing by going deeper within ourselves and finding our inner resources, gifts, and intuitive guidance to help us through the difficulties, and even the suffering we may be experiencing. Many of you have heard me say that one of my favorite quotes is by French philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, which is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And the type of human experiences we're having right now are really testing our spirits to have fortitude and courage and lead the way to overcome the challenges we are dealing with right now. But how can we know that our spirit is here with us to lead the way if we don't even take time to listen to it or even honor it? Which brings me to my special guest today, Carolyn Coleridge. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Carolyn Coleridge is a licensed psychologist. She is a Columbia University trained psychotherapist, energy healer, and practicing intuitive. She has been licensed in New York, New Jersey, and California as a psychotherapist. She volunteered for 6 years at UCLA as an energy healer, working with the complementary alternative medicine team for the pediatric pain clinic under a pediatrician. She has appeared on CNN and also Grizzly Knows Best. She has worked in mental health for 25 years, teaching spiritual wisdom, mindfulness, and energy awareness in a major HMO. She has written 3 books: Honor Your Spirit, which we're going to talk about today, How to Work with the Universe, and Soul Wisdom, Inspirations for Living a Spiritual Life. She is a spiritual wisdom teacher at the Den Meditation Center in Los Angeles and has a spiritual healing, reading, and counseling practice in Los Angeles. Welcome to Mindfulness Monday, Carolyn. So wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you for inviting me. This is exciting.
Yes, there's a lot for us to talk about today. So, I want to start with how wonderful it is that you devoted in an entire book to honoring your spirit, which is
Hmm.
your title, and how you invite the reader in to really come to know their spiritual nature. I say in my book, Live True, that it's important to start each day taking your spiritual pulse. So I think you and I are trying to make the point that the spirit reigns supreme. Tell our listeners how your personal journey led you to advocate for the spirit to be honored and why it's the basis of your work.
Yes, great question. I think when I was studying at Columbia, being a clinical social worker, a psychotherapist, I was having spiritual experiences. They just started opening up. Columbia is a very conservative school. It was one of the oldest schools in social work. So I just started to see ghosts out of the blue, and they scared me. And I didn't know why I was seeing ghosts. They just like showed up. My mother had a lot of spiritual experiences, even though she was a science teacher. She was the first Black woman to head a science department in Connecticut in a high school. So, but she was very scientific, but then she also had spiritual experiences. So when I called her about it, I said, "Mom, my God, I'm seeing ghosts. I'm so nervous." She's like, "Oh, okay, great. What are your grades like?" She really minimized it. She says, how are you doing? I'm paying a lot of money for you to be at Columbia." And my mother had gone to Columbia, so she pushed me to go there. So I was like, "But this is scaring me." She's like, "Okay, they'll go away," and they didn't. So I sought out a spiritual reader because I would wake up and they would be staring at me. They would be talking to me. They would ask questions, and they looked real. And I was like, "Why is this happening at 28?" When I was there. And I realized that it was my Saturn return, which is a time when your soul Saturn comes back in your chart, and it helps you put your life onto your journey. But from that, I started to seek out a reader, and she said, "Oh, you're supposed to combine psychotherapy and psychic work." And I said, "No way. If I say I'm hearing and seeing things at Columbia, they're going to put me into the loony bin." That's in LA, we call it a 5150. I said, "I can't tell people that." But she's like, "Well, you should, it's part of your destiny, it's part of your heritage." And I told my mother, she's like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, it's part of, us. But, it's just part and parcel of who you are." So because the spirit became a guiding force in me, then I started asking questions like, why is this happening, universe? Like, why is this happening now? And I was reading You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, and I knew that if you ask the universe, you'll get a response. I started getting trained in that type of thinking. So I would go out in Manhattan and I kept asking, like, why is this happening? What's going on? And five people came up to me and said, "Do you know how to find the World Trade Center or downtown or Chinatown or, the 34th Street?" And I'm like, "Sure, here it is." Next weekend, there was 10 people. Next weekend, it was 15. And then like hordes of people kept coming up to me, and it was so bizarre. I kept asking the universe, why is this happening to me? What's going? And then my friend and I looked at each other and they're like, "Oh, I'm supposed to help people find their direction." So it wasn't it was a literal figurative example of what, and it wasn't a physical direction on the earth plane. It was their spiritual direction. I was helping them literally find directions. After I got the message, nobody asked me questions anymore in the middle of Manhattan. So I realized there was this dialogue with the universe of going back and forth, and that the universe was responsive to my questions, inquiries, and also to evolve my soul. And then when I started to listen to my spirit more, that energy that pushes you forward something and pushes you away from other things, that life force within you, I realized that the spirit is very sacred and it's our guiding force on the earth plane. And that we really have to not just listen to it. We don't have to like put it on the side, but we need to honor it, because this is why our souls, we come here. We come to grow and to learn and to evolve and to help others, to love and to create. And all these things are in our soul. It's in our aura field, it's in our connection to our meditation and being present. And as we connect to that spirit and honor it, we start changing our lives. So,
It's interesting because, when you talk about therapy and then going into the psychic areas or the paranormal, if you will, which always
yes.
connotes something that's just very otherworldly and esoteric, and many people are not comfortable with it because they don't know what it is, which is interesting for me because I'm all for talk therapy and depth psychology, which goes deeper into
Mhm.
the unconscious. And I myself spent many years in Jungian analysis, which
Mm.
was life changing for me. But even Carl Jung, who had a number of psychics in his family, I mean, they used to do
Mm.
seances,
Mm.
that it was his lifelong engagement with the paranormal that actually influenced his theory of synchronicity.
Mhm.
You don't hear that. That's not talked about. Synchronicity, which has become just something that we use in our daily references to coincidence, if you will. But if you really probe deeper into where he came from as a psychoanalyst, it's fascinating to hear where the therapies are combining with these areas that really are very much directed towards the spirit. So, it's so interesting that you were able to, through understanding that these messages were coming to you, that really was your life work, and I'm
Mhm.
seeing that more therapists are integrating these other modalities into their work. So how was it for you when you initially started to combine the two, if you will, when you
Yes.
were working with your patients
Yeah.
and tending, if you will, you're tending to their spirit. Okay, that's really what's going on.
Yes, and that's the part that came to grow and learn, and that's the part that's gonna that pulled you in, and that's the part that's gonna take you out. So we might as well listen to it and honor it. And at the beginning, I have to agree with what you say in terms of paranormal. It was a little scary to me, and it was the exact difference. So I wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna be a healer and intuitive, and that's great. No, I hid it for years. I would slowly and quietly go to classes at the Open Center in Manhattan or a spiritual circle in LA. I mean, in Manhattan and Chelsea, and then I would do Reiki circles. In it was all in New York. I did my training. I went to the Edgar Casey Institute. They had one in New York, and I trained as an intuitive just to really stop all the ghosts coming and knowing why is this happening. And but I was still a straight laced therapist during the day, and it wasn't until a client came to me very depressed, suicidal, in my office on 34th Street, and I didn't know what to do with her. And she's like, and I trained as a Reiki person, but I never used it because you're not supposed. There's certain licensing paradigms you're not supposed to do. Like you're not supposed to touch clients when you're a therapist. You're not supposed to do readings or healing. So I was really like, putting up a appropriate boundary as to why people came to me and what I was supposed to do under my license and ethics. But this client was so depressed, and she's like really planning her suicide and how miserable she was. And it was in August, and all the psychiatrists leave. And I was like, oh my God, who am I going to get an evaluation by her? I can't call anyone. So in my mind, in my spirit, it said, send her a Reiki symbol. So I sent her the Choka Ray, and it was telepathic. I mean, I really just literally sent. I didn't put my hand up or anything, and she started to plan her death, and she just stopped. And she's like, "Whoa, what happened?" I said, "I just sent you a symbol." She goes, "I feel this wave of peace and good." She's like, "What is that?" And I said, "It's Reiki." And I was like, "Well, that's part and parcel of what we're supposed to be doing." So it really helped to heal her. And I said, I have to combine both. So I said, it helped her, and she changed and she got better. And I think she even trained in Reiki. So it's something where it was part of my soul's path. And I realized you're healing the personality. You're only healing an aspect of it. You have to heal the soul or work with the soul. And psyche means of the mind. Psychic means of the soul. So it's the same word. It's just part of, and I think Carl Jung was way ahead of the stream because, yeah, coincidence is to coincide, and synchronicity is what leads your soul on its path. So,
Absolutely. I think personally he was not only a psychoanalyst, that he was a mystic. That's just my
mhm,
take on it. I know there have been many things written about that, but for me, I think that he traversed many realms, of the psyche and of the unconscious and of the dream world.
mhm,
So he, for me, really was a perfect example. And back in the day, that was, a long time ago, that he was able to integrate it. We don't think of him as a psychic. I don't think people call Carl Jung a psychic, even though he probably had psychic intuitive abilities. But I
mm,
think this whole sort of mythology around, psychology or talk therapy, especially today, and as a mindfulness practitioner myself, which, by the way, even something like mindfulness, which is simply, the essence of it is the practice of being present. I've
mhm,
had people that are a little bit like, what's that? Do you know
mhm,
what I mean? So something that is, I say, well, actually, I've talked to people and said, NFL players, NBA players, practice mindfulness and meditation. It's not woo woo, I promise you. So I think it's just educating people and getting them comfortable with their own abilities, if you will. That is great that you're implementing that in your work. And I'm trying to introduce that through mindfulness. I think more people will start to get comfortable with it. I love your acronym for SPIRIT. Why don't you give our
mhm.
listeners a more condensed breakdown of it?
Yes, I want to say something about presence, which is part of the mindfulness too. And I teach that at a major HMO because in the presence is a present, and the present is our gift, and our gift is our guiding force, is what our the divine gave to us. So, gift, I say, is God inspired feelings and talents synchronized. So that's our gift. So our gift is our present, and with a present, you have to open. So if we listen to our spirit, we have to open our gifts to live on the earth plane. And then when I talk about this in mindfulness, this is how I open up in a major HMO. I say, what is your spirit? And people just, crickets, like nobody knows what it is. And when you're depressed and burnout and dead tired and drained, I was like, this is words that you use, right? And they're like, yes. And I said, that has to do with your spirit, and elements, because burnout is fire, dead tired is earth, drained is water, and exhaust is air. And I said, all these are elements, and this is what helps us. But in terms of what is the spirit, I say your spirit is synchronicity and signs. Whenever you see synchronicity and signs, that's your spirit, your guiding force leading you. So somebody would say, "Oh my God, I had 3 signs that I should go study teaching, and I got a scholarship in this." I said, "That's your spirit, and your spirit is that part that wants to be alive and moving and showing you." So if you see signs and the signs come in 3, so the synchronicity of the signs, that's part of the spirit leading you. P, what is your purpose? And people are like, I don't know what my purpose is. I said, what are you passionate about? Oh, I love helping kids. I love helping at-risk youth. I love working with geriatric. I said, that's what you're supposed to be doing. Because what you're passionate about becomes your purpose. And then you have a purpose, then you become passionate about it. So it's this play back and forth. So the easiest way to find your purpose is to find your passion. And a lot of people who are depressed and anxious, a lot of times they don't have a purpose. So it really helps to put a light in them. And then I, what is I in terms of spirit? This is your guiding force, the intelligence. The intelligence of spirit leads you on your path. I feel it's part of the energy of the divine that's within us. And that intelligence can create bodies, universes, health, people, planets, food. Who is this creator? I said, whatever creates it, I believe in God, but whatever you believe in, I want to connect to that energy that created all that. And then I want to let that be my guiding force, because that energy has they have your book of life. They know why you're here. So you start tapping into that, you start getting, your guiding force, your contract that you made to coincide, to synchronize, and to start leading you on your path. So that's the intelligence. That's the I. The other I in spirit is your intuition. The language of our spirit. How does our spirit speak? It's intuition. It speaks through our body, through our stomach, through chills, through aha moments. It speaks through, feelings and aha moments and dreams. That's our intuition and intuitive awareness, and just kind of feeling what's, right and wrong. So when you enhance your intuition, and you do that through meditation many times because you're in the quiet, in the space, that can help your spirit to become more activated. So then the R, you have the spirit, it has purpose and passion, synchronicity. How do you take care of it? You have to renew and rejuvenate it. I really highly recommend smudging with sage and with essential oils and going to nature. That's how you renew your spirit that loves the elements. Again, as I mentioned before. So you have to renew and rejuvenate this guiding force, this parameter of energy. Then then the other I is inspirational, part of the spirit. What inspires you is what your spirit is leading you to. Maybe you like music or dance or art. You're a creator and you need to go into that energy. So that if that inspires you, either do it as a career or let it help heal you when you're overwhelmed. So the other I is insight. When you have your gifts, you're more insightful than other people. If you're an artist, your insights are amazing. If you're a writer, you have other great insights. If you're a dancer, your insights and be able to move a certain way will be enhanced with your spirit. So you'll have that gift. And then the last T is truth. Whenever your spirit speaks to you, that's your truth. And you have to trust it. That's the other T, because that is the part you, again, that brought you here. And that's the part at the end of your life that will take you out. So you have to, listen to that truth and trust. If you get the chills, move forward. If you get the coinciding coincidence, then that's spirit speaking to you.
I think it's wonderful that you break it down like that, because I think for people, I know for me that when I teach mindfulness, even if you explain what something is, oftentimes for people it's not experiential. So it becomes more of an intellectual concept for them. So breaking down even a word like spirit or what it means to be present, to really walk somebody through it so that they can have those experiences and have a relationship to all of the things that you just mentioned, literally breaking it down as an acronym, really starts to open them up to having a experience with the very concept that they want to go towards, but they don't really know maybe how to do that. Do you know? So I think it's
Yes.
lovely to break that down for people. And the whole idea of the universe speaking to us, which you talk about also in the book, that can also be abstract for people because the universe can feel so huge and overwhelming for people, and then they can feel so minuscule, so small, that they don't really understand, like, well, who is listening to me? The universe seems like an abstract notion, if you will. So to connect people to their spirit, to start with that, you're already opening them up towards the expansiveness of knowing that there can actually be a conversation with
Hmm.
not only them with their own spirit, but with the universal spirit, if you will,
Yes.
universal consciousness. So, it's so beautiful to bring people on this journey that I know that they really long to have. But as you and I know, sometimes the how to's, which your book breaks that down really, and it's very accessible for the reader to know how to go on this journey. And so that these ideas no longer remain in the esoteric and the unavailable sort of mystical realms that people don't feel that they can experience. You talk about your soul and having soul contracts, which you just said a minute ago.
Mhm.
So tell our listeners, Carolyn, a little bit more about what you mean by that, because some people, again, don't really know,
Mhm.
what does that mean for me to have a soul contract.
Yes, I feel like the spiritual world kind of mimics the physical world. And down here, we have contracts. We have contracts for our phones, or for going to school, or for credit cards. We have all these different contracts we write up. And in the spiritual world, we have contracts too, and we have contracts with various souls. For everything's about growth and about life lessons, so our soul can evolve and create more life. So you might have a contract with a person, like to learn about mindfulness, or to have a marriage, and you feel that's what this chemistry about. The two souls feel this connection, like I feel like I know you, or I feel a synchronicity, or I feel pull towards you. Whatever you feel pull towards, and that's using your energy body, your spirit. That's your spirit pulling you. That's usually a contract. And if something pushes you away, you got to listen to that also. So the contracts are these lessons and these things to help our soul grow. Like I might have a contract to be an intuitive and a healer. I didn't know, but I felt pulled towards that work. Somebody might have a contract to invent, incredible scientific inventions. They feel pulled to do it and work hard. And this is the time of the creator. This is like the Aquarian age we're in now. That's why everything is breaking down. So a lot of people's contracts they're like, what's going on? Because we have to be the creators for that. So we have soul contracts, we have spiritual contracts with people, we have karmic contracts, cultural contracts. I think maybe the African Americans had a contract for the civil rights movement. Maybe the Jews had a contract to teach other people about the Holocaust. Like, I'm not privy to everything, but you can see that there's contracts all around the world. Native Americans may have a contract. That's a cultural contract. And then there's women may have contracts. Right now, the divine feminine is coming in. The Me Too movement was breaking down. Shouldn't happen, and now we're going to start, uplifting women to their ability to be creators. And we're in the Aquarian age, and women create life. So what a powerful thing, and we've negated that. We're on a female planet, so and that I feel like that's a contract too. We have to honor the female energy. We're on a female planet. It's like we missed that piece. So a lot of contracts are done, and you feel it. And some people know the contracts because they have deja vu, which means already seen. You go to a certain environment and you're like, that seems familiar to me. I feel like I need to go to that institute. Or they have a dream. And I remember I saw a dream that had a name of a psychoanalytic institute that I had to go to. I just saw the name. And then later I saw paperwork. I'm like, oh, I should go to that institute and train. It was so clear in my dream. And actually, the more we meditate and we're mindful, the more we open up those realms into spirit where we see and hear truth. So that's why it's such a great practice. So, and when the contracts can be broken,
Right. I
um,
was going to say that they're not,
no,
not fixed, if you will, that there's a malleability to them. And then there's a co-creation of contracts,
yes,
I really like the way in which you talked about. For me, it's the understanding of that what's within those contracts is the lessons, or the lessons, if
Mm.
you will. And it's like you said, you go into a agreement, whatever we want to call those agreements, contracts, relationship, to something that you have to learn from, do you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
they can continue on. I really do believe in the time continuum. So I think for some people, they'd be like, well, can I break my contract, or am I forever locked into my contract? I think that there's this constant evolution with the contracts that we make at a time where, for me, also contracts connotes more commitment, if you will.
Mm.
That
Yes.
we're making a commitment to the learning.
Mm-hmm.
We are there to learn, and we have signed on for that, if you will. Do you know?
Yes, I feel like we have a book of life, and if some people call it the Akashic records, and we sit with the divine, and we have this information that we're supposed to like do, and it's almost like an actor on a stage. There's certain marks you're supposed to hit, and if you don't hit them, there's no something negative or punishment. It's just this is an experience, and I think sometimes we're all too hard on ourselves, and sometimes people felt like, oh, that was the one, I should have married him or her, and that was a contract maybe unfulfilled. Now you feel it in your heart. You're like, that could have been. But we also have universal laws. And one of the biggest, most important laws is the law of free will. The energy of the universe, you can do whatever you want. It's your free will. And you might feel it in your soul, but it doesn't mean that you get negated at the end of the day. It just means like you might have missed something, but you can co-create something else. There's something else. We're not supposed to be sad. We're not supposed to have these horrible experiences. Some contracts are help other people to open up. Like the Mothers Against Drunk Driving, that may have been a painful, painful soul contract, but look how many people she's helped. I don't know the person's name who created it, or the Amber Alert. People have these experiences that their names later live on, and that's how we honor contracts that were painful, because we say, well, no, that's why people build foundations. Let's let people learn about what's going on, and then that's like at the end of the day, when you go back to the other side, you're like, oh, you helped so many more souls, because our souls and our personalities are very different. Our souls want to help the planet evolve. We want to help other people. We want to help ourselves. We want to learn lessons. And if you listen to your contracts, you'll do all those and clear karma. But if you don't, you won't. But you can come back, or you can recreate, or you can, do, I don't know all the laws there, but I got some insight onto it. But it depends on what you want to do. But you can also create something new, just like universes die, and they open up. They open up again. So there's a lot of things that you can shift and change. That's why we have lawyers. People get out of contracts. Our lawyers, our lawyers are our own soul.
Some people might bristle at the word contract because it sounds so finite, if you will.
Exactly. Yes.
I said, and again, I look upon it as more of it's a understanding, it's a relationship, and for me, the way I interpret it is, I'm making a commitment. I'm
Mm,
signing on for this, and I don't mean literally writing my name on a piece of paper, but I'm availing myself to this experience. So therefore, it's contractual in that I'm showing up for this because my freedom of will wants me to. So I think
mm,
if people understand that it's not something that they're being forced to do or made to do, but that they are wanting to do it willingly, they can look
mhm,
upon it as, wow, I'm signing on for something. I love to use the
mhm.
expression signing on or showing up. Do you know?
Yes.
That doesn't mean you're signing your life away to it. Do you know?
No.
So, Carolyn, let's talk a little bit about soul attributes. And in your book, you call toxic soul qualities and positive. Talk about toxic soul qualities and positive soul qualities. So, I want the listeners to know more about that as far as how it pertains to the qualities of the soul.
Yeah, so there's different things that can help your soul evolve. And as we're moving from the third dimension to the fifth dimension, which is a higher vibration, we want to kind of listen to things that help us feel good. So our soul like things that feel good, like compassion, like love, patience, serenity, goodwill, all these things, peace, a very high vibrational energy. So when we start moving towards compassion, or even in mindfulness, loving compassion towards ourselves and loving kindness, then our soul starts to evolve and we start helping other people. Our energy starts shifting and things start helping in a positive way. So those are positive attributes that our soul goes towards. And in our earth plane, which is kind of heavy and dense, there's a lot of fear right now. There's a lot of negativity. There's anger and there's rage and there's manipulation and there's abuse. Those are negative qualities. These are all choices. If somebody does something wrong to you, do you want to abuse them, hit them, or do you want to be more compassionate and say, let's talk this out? So it's all these choices that you make. And as you work with more positive soul qualities, your light gets brighter and brighter. This is why when people may see like the Dalai Lama, or somebody who's highly evolved, they're like, wow, their energy is so pure, they're so kind, or they're feeling like this lightness. Is because they're emanating through their aura and through their choices love, compassion, gentleness. Then again, if somebody's negative qualities of anger and rage, people retract from that.
And the
you
Dalai
know
Lama, I just want to interject, the Dalai
oh
Lama, of all people, who, what he went through with his own people, that he
mm,
was, they were a displaced people and had
yes.
to leave their homeland and reconnect into another environment because of persecution. So, and
mm,
talk about a soul that emanates kindness and compassion and ultimately forgiveness when
mm,
they've been through so much discrimination, so much prejudice, and we're seeing these things played out over and over again on the planet. And
yes.
are we rising, as you're describing? Are we rising in our higher soul vibration, or are we resorting to more baser energies, as you're talking about, that are more fueled with anger and hate?
Yeah, and I think it's a combination of both, because as you mentioned that story, Mandela did the same thing when he was in South Africa. He was really like forgiveness, and how can he do that being jailed? But he was able to give an example to other people. So I feel like there's a combination. There's literally, when people say there's all this metaphysical stuff, there's two earths. I feel it's choices. There's like 3D, which is more about competition, anger, aggression, and negativity, fear. And then 5D is like a higher vibratory energy of love, compassion, light, oneness. Let's come together. So we're seeing, as we're going from the Piscean age, which was 26,000 years, that's the Mayan calendar when they ended it on 2012, 2012. Um, December 20th, 2012, that was allegedly the end of the Mayan calendar. There was the ending of a cycle, and we're going more into the Aquarian age. Now, very interesting, some research shows that in Ethiopia, where they believe that the civilization started in Africa and probably in Ethiopia, because they found Lucy there, the oldest person, that it's 2012 in Ethiopia, because they have a 13-month calendar. So right this year, so many ways, this is 2012. So we're seeing a transformation from the Piscean age, which is like ask God help me, to like the Aquarian age, co-creators. So as we create, it's hard to create from fear and anger unless you transform it, like the civil rights movement. You have to use those, the passive resistant movement. So transforming it, getting the anger. Yes, I'm angry. What happens? But how can I go into peace? How can I exemplify that? How can I teach that? So these lessons are coming back over and over, different cultures, different times, to reteach us that our souls don't like the anger and the rage. They like this, but there's still a lot of people putting out and doing negative stuff. But you can't, all the times you can't meet fire with fire, because it becomes dynamite. Do people need to be angry? They can be, but like in my book, I say you can't stay there, because that's gonna, implode and then create more, because the universe is magnetic, and what you put out will come back.
It's true.
Yeah.
I understand even with my mindfulness work, people will ask me, well, what about anger? Or I wrote a book on transforming negative and fear-based thoughts. It's not like I'm saying we're never going to think a negative thought again or a fear-based thought. These are givens. And when people feel justified to express their emotions, I say, be with your emotions. They're real.
Mm.
Observe them. but the goal is really to take that to a higher level of consciousness. So we may be saying be seeing such a condensed expression of these denser energies, if you will, which I think are lower vibrational energies based on survival. Do you know?
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's very much the old sort of reptilian instinct of like, we have to survive no matter what, and even go into the notion of being threatened by others that survive, that challenge our survival. So I look at this type of behavior and this type of interactivity is more of a baser consciousness. So clearly what you're talking about is we have to learn, and even if there are lessons that repeat over and over again, we're going to find ourselves having to learn them over again. You know, I always think of that, the famous quote of Christ, you know, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. I mean, how long are we not going to know what we do?
Yes.
Getting a little old, people.
Yeah. Well,
You know
there's,
what I mean?
yeah.
So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying there's people on, that's part of the earth is a school. And there's like nice people, there's a cool group, there's the angry group, there's the gothic group. There's always different people going to be here because that's how you grow and learn. There's always a duality is going to be on the earth plane, the yin and the yang, the male, the female, the black, the white. There's always that balance because that conflict. And then from that, you make choices, makes us grow. And that holds actually the earth plane together. That kind of, the sun goes up and it comes down. The waves go out and it comes back. What you think will come back to you. It's like, what choices do you make from that? And then we need people to open up to a higher truth, like Mandela or the Dalai Lama, who've gone through it. And as an example, like, oh, or Christ, oh, I can make a different choice. Look what happened to them. So there are teachers, there are true masters and teachers that can help us overcome these things. And that's what I was trying to say in my book too, that I've had darkness happen, but then I try to overcome it. What was my next step? By asking the universe, and the universe would tell me, like when to say, sue, and I was like, I heard, do not sue, do this. So there's different things that can happen. It's not easy.
Choices. We have choices, but you know, when we talk about
Yes.
the great masters, if you will, those that walked the earth before us, and we
Mm.
speak of their wisdom, you know, we can. It's easy for us to espouse the wisdom that has been told from those that walked before us, but we forget very easily what they came to teach. And there we go again in this, you know, karmic samsara psychic, you know, wheel of repeating over and over again and not really taking in the words of wisdom, you know. So I think it's really incumbent upon us to, if we're going to look at those people and say, I look to them, it's very easy to look to them in religious context. You know, we
Mm.
go to religious places to pray. We believe in our, for those that are religious or those that are spiritual and not religious, what are you going towards to draw from? We can't keep
Mhm.
espousing and pontificating these words of wisdom, but living very opposite to what those words meant. You know, I want to go a little bit into. I wrote an article for Huffington Post many years ago, and it was
Mm.
called "There's a spiritual shift happening. Do you feel it?" And there's a lot of things that are resonant in your book, and it's, you know, for those that have been speaking about a spiritual shift, like you and I have been talking about it probably for a while. You know, we are clearly experiencing a major one now. I think we're always in the throes of spiritual shifts, but this is a major one. And,
Mhm.
you know, you say in your book, which you wrote a couple of years ago, that things are shifting at lightning speed right now. I couldn't agree with you more. So, you know, let's talk a little bit about that, Caroline, about how, why it's so important to listen to our spirit at this time when we're in the throes of a very accelerated spiritual shift right now.
Yes. Well, and I'm glad you touched on the word religion because I think you see the religions breaking down too in some ways. I'm not negating it. I grew up, my father was a minister, but religion means comes from the word regulate, which means to regulate something. And spirit comes from the word spirituality, breath. And that's the life force. So we're moving from, and spirit loves to create. So from regulating ourselves by somebody else's paradigms, like the government or schools or food systems, to what is our breath, what is our spirit, what does our truth say, what we need to do. You have to get rid of systems to create something new. An artist does not create on an already made palette. They have a clear palette, and then they start creating. So where everything is breaking down right now, the food's just GMO that's manufactured, the government, the school systems. Now parents are home with their kids. They're like, what are you learning? I don't like the way you're learning. They're starting to see different things in the school systems, the the banking systems. We're seeing truth in everything's about banking and money. A lot of these truths that were hidden are coming forward for us to really see and trust, and also to practice on trusting your intuition. What feels right? What feels, that what feels right or wrong, and what do you want to create out of this? So as these systems break down, even mental health is breaking down. I'm a
Yeah.
psychotherapist. I'm teaching about auras and chakras, in mental health, and about I bring crystals in sometimes and essential oils. Um, so because we're opening up to our spirit, because we need to enhance that. We need to spirit needs a clear playing field, so we need to like open up to like, how do you create? And people are like, well, what do I do next? You got to go within.
Totally.
You got
Yes.
to listen to your heart.
Totally.
Like they've said this before. Say it
Uh,
again.
which is something very uncomfortable for a lot of people.
Yes.
No, it's not easy to kind of
No.
venture within. It's a lot easier to kind of focus on without. Do you
And
know?
that's why these systems are breaking down, because they're up there. People say, well, I need this job or this that. But when so many people are at home, guess what they're doing? They're creating their own businesses. They're creating this. And on earth, that's part of the plan. We're fulfilling the book, because the word heart and earth are the same letters turned around. And it is scary to do things and to create. And I think the artists are way ahead of us, because they know how to work freelance. They know how to tap in. They know how to do that. But
They do, but I just want to add that there's a lot of people in the performing arts. I was in the movie business myself for 10 years. There's a lot of people
oh,
that are, not just them. I'm not singling anybody out, but that they're like, well, who am I if I don't have an audience right now?
mm,
Who am I if I can't be on a stage?
yes.
Am I if I can't perform in front of hundreds of thousands of people? So nobody's off the hook here.
Uh-huh.
Everybody has an opportunity to go within and not be relying on what we draw our energy from to define our identity. Do you know?
Yes.
It's a major meditation to be with, well, what is my identity if I'm not playing my role, or I'm not, living my life out based on my persona or my identity. So
And
I
yeah.
think we're all in this. When I think we're all in this together, this is what the together means to me. Not just getting
Yes.
over a pandemic. I think we're in this together with everything that's going on and that's been going on, which is also requiring us to go within, whether it's the pandemic, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's an election that's coming up. It's about go within and be with self and find out who you are.
Hmm. And yeah, that's a good point, because it's making people realize, even as actors, etc., that we are actors on a stage. We
Yeah,
are souls. We are, so it's making everyone realize, if they want to, that we're souls that come here for a reason and then we leave. And then how do you create out of nothing? And that's not common to do, and some people can create better than others, but it is starting to listen to your heart and moving with your spirit and your energy and creating.
yeah, I see that the time is going to, you and I easily could talk for hours. I get that, but it's going to fly by. So let's talk a little bit, Carolyn, about clearing karma. You
Mm,
share your own personal story of how you had to overcome a very difficult professional incident in your life and chose forgiveness as a way
mm,
to clear karma with somebody that you perceived as dark and abusive, and
yeah.
who also could have been very threatening to your professional well-being.
Yes.
Wrote that you embraced spirituality because it is universally loving and
Hmm.
where you feel understood and accepted. So lovely. Tell our listeners a little more about how you were able to literally take the energy higher and let your
Mhm.
spiritual wisdom help move you through such a difficult time.
Yes, and it happens when I do work stress groups and mindfulness and meditation. And a lot of times people have harassment or, racism or discrimination or gender issues. And a lot of times underneath that push, that negativity, they're either supposed to teach the person or they're supposed to create something new. And that whole incident was, because I was doing spiritual work and it was a little threatening to the paradigm, because people were getting better. and people were getting faster, and I was helping them to tap in, and I was actually teaching meditation. I thought that was weird too. But what happened is that I realized that I was age 36 at the time, that I asked Spirit, why is this happening? I found a notebook that I had written a note in at age 26. And I said, in 10 years, I need to work on my own. I just wrote that down because something happened at 26. And it was 10 years later. And it's almost like universally, this person was put on my path to help me, to push me out into doing my other spiritual work. And that's when I started working at UCLA as a healer. That's when I'd forgotten about it. How did Spirit get this notebook I just found? Because I was cleaning things out. So I realized this might have been one of those contracts, that I really didn't like this person, but maybe on the other side, we made a contract to say, like, in 10 years, if I don't do that, push me out. So I believe, is racism real? Yes, this is real, but you don't have to, but the world is an illusion. So you don't have to play into that. So after, it was hard, but I pulled out. But then my life really took off in many ways. Now I was angry for years, but I said, if I end up the same way, um, what will happen is that I won't learn that. Didn't learn the lesson. And then I asked the universe, and I heard very clearly, God said, why don't you work for me? And I looked around, I'm like, and it's, why don't you work for me? And I was like, why? Because I was doing so well in the job and I was getting high scores. And the message was, the pay is good, the work is steady, and the retirement benefits are out of this world. So the divine has a sense of humor. And then I got the job at UCLA, and then I started doing readings, and people calling me out of the blue. I was like, how did you get my number? I was hiding it for years, but that was my soul path. So sometimes we can look at something tragic and make it a triumph and
It's
reform
true.
things.
I like to say the sweet spot is on the other side of the pain. You
Mm,
gotta move through it. You really do,
yes.
and rather than to avoid it, and again with these practices of breathing through the difficulty and knowing what awaits you on the other side really is the bliss or the sweet spot, if you will. Share your story because we're going to move quickly now through some of the remaining questions. Share your story. It's really lovely about the wilderness boy. Um,
Oh,
and
yeah.
how using the healing work that you do helped him and how you've helped other young souls with the work that you do.
hmm So at UCLA, I was doing energy healing with two pediatricians, a woman, Lonnie Zelter, who created the program. It was really amazing. Um, and I was doing energy healing, hands-on healing. And he had chronic pain in his heart. He was like maybe 19 or 20. He was just over the pediatric age, but they could not find anything wrong with his heart. And he went through all these medical texts all the time, over and over and over, and they realized it was, and this is a lot of the kids that come to the program, we call them empaths, sensitive souls. Judith Orloff talks about the empaths.
Judith
And
wonderful. She's a dear friend.
oh yeah, and she was the one that got me onto CNN with her, and I think she's friends with the woman that was at Lonnie Zelter, who was at UCLA. So and it's actually really transformed a lot of people I've helped using that word empath and giving out her work at the major HMO I work with, because a lot of them are so sensitive, but I feel they're brought here to help the souls evolve, to help people. If we're sensitive, so sensitive, we know other people are going to feel, then we won't do, it'll help us with the karma. We won't make these bad choices, like go to war or whatever we do. So this young guy, I'll call him Eric, he had a lot of pain, but it was energetic pain. So I would do the healing on him and use crystals. He said, wow, I feel so more positive. And over, we would feel like he was close to his mother, but most closer to his grandmother who had died. And his grandmother was his caregiver. His mother went to work, and his grandma was very nurturing. He's very heart centered. So after I kept doing the healing, and he was like maybe 20. He never had a girlfriend in high school. He was always like out. He had a girlfriend. His heart opened. So it was heart pain, heart ache. His heart chakra closed, and he would bring the little crystals. It was so cute, and he would bring them in his back, and he put them on his chakras, and then we would do the healing. And then another interesting thing, every time he went up north, he felt he didn't have pain. So there's something about nature that helped heal him and got rid of that energy because his heart opened, his chakras open. So that was and then he was in a relationship, and then he did better. But
So
yeah,
beautiful, so beautiful. I want to
yeah.
segue into. I had a schizophrenic sister, and I consider her one of my greatest spiritual teachers in my lifetime. and was the inspiration for me to embark on my psychospiritual path and to learn more about the mind and the psyche. When you mentioned anthropologist Dr. Alberto Villoldo, who studies
Mhm.
shamanism in many cultures and has a different view of schizophrenics, it really resonated for me. You say
Mm.
that in his book, Healing States, that when people, from his book, that when people are schizophrenic in Peruvian cultures, they are considered untrained shamans. My sister was extremely psychic and extremely intuitive, and I only wish that her gifts could have been fully realized on her life journey this time around. Have no doubt, next time around, she is in the etheric angelic realms as far as I'm concerned. So, I feel that there is so much more to know and learn about what we call mental illness. And in time, we will come to understand the difference between someone who seems that they are losing their mind
Mhm.
or perhaps hearing the divine, as you say in your book. What are your thoughts about that? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's probably going to be the new paradigm because there's different places in Brazil, like they call it spiritism, where they actually have mediums that come in and help people with mental health disorders. But I do believe that with trauma, what happens is that you hear it with people that have had car accidents or surgeries or physical or sexual abuse, their spirit and their body separate. And when your spirit and your body separates, I think two things can happen. One, your soul is open to other things coming in. There's also chemical imbalances with schizophrenia, which to me means split mind, because then there's also what happens is that if you leave that soul open, I feel like energies can get in there and kind of mess with the brain. I really do. There is, I don't remember the study, but there's a study that's showing that people who meditate and schizophrenic both go to the alpha state. So I feel that's why schizophrenics can actually hear things, but they're hearing lower energies. I've had, and this is just from practice, I've had many schizophrenics, especially when I was in Manhattan, that would like read me. They would tell me things, but then they would say something really mean at the end. And it was like a negative force was saying something like so vicious. And I was like, who are they listening to?
Right.
It's like, is it's positive, positive? Then they're like, eh, you're mean and evil. And it's like a dark force. And I feel like they're just tapping into lower energy. And a shaman would just open them up.
Being a host, just like they're being a host. They are
Yes.
for the darker energies, if you will. And I think the filter, the inability to filter out the darker energies because it comes through them. So, I had one as a sister, you've worked with
Mm.
chronically.
Yeah, yes, and they're always so intuitive. And then there also is sometimes trauma or chemical imbalances, and they're probably when we start working with energy more. I also know a lot of people that are bipolar are very like intuitive. They also have really powerful dreams, and that mania is like a heightened energy vibration. Now, I'm not saying people should always take their meds and be careful because we don't have the platform to work with that yet, but in other cultures they do. So if we start integrating and we start connecting and talking more, we may be able to help some of these people. And I've worked with people that are schizophrenic and other things and help them to. I worked with a guy remotely. I've never met. It was my intern's brother who was having a lot of problems, and I would pray for him every night. And I felt these two energies attached, and my intern was like, oh my gosh, he used to always talk about these two big beings in his room. I thought he was crazy. And I said, I think he has attachments. And I was starting to clear his field and pray for him. And he actually he got hospitalized and he got better. First time ever in the 10 years he was schizophrenic, he started to take his meds. All I was doing was praying with him. I never met him and praying for him. So what can prayer do? And then I started clearing. Then he ended up taking his meds. Then she said, then he stepped down, then he got out of group, and then he started to lead the groups. And I was like, are you crazy? And I was like, I never met him. And so her family was Korean, and they said that they have Korean healers that kind of recommended that, but they didn't believe it until, like, they said, we want to go back to that. I lost track of him, but he got better. Then he eventually got discharged, which never happened. And there was something with prayer, working with these negative energies. And in her household, she told me that her father was very abusive and he was alcoholic. And alcohol can bring in darker energies. There's a great article called The Spiritual Consequences of Alcohol Consumption. And the word alcohol comes from the word alcohol, Alkuhl, which means comes to the word ghoul, which whenever you bring alcohol, you put holes in your energy field. It can bring in dark energies. And when I talk about this stuff in mental health, a lot of people resonate with it. And these are people that are struggling with this
Right.
kind of stuff.
I think a lot of people that are struggling with addiction really are looking to connect to something that's more of the divine, if you will,
Yeah.
more
Oh, yes.
or of spirit, but they do it through these substances, which give them the high, but then they drop low again. And I think the high that they're really wanting to reach is whatever you want to call it, God, the divine, source. But it's unfortunate because the very thing that they shouldn't be ingesting or putting into their system is the very thing that's hurting them. So we're towards the end here, and I want to combine two questions, if I will, if we can move through them, cover them in 5 minutes. So as an intuitive and healer, there might be people out there that are listening and they themselves want to become an intuitive healer, So give them some insight into that, and then I want to segue into our last question together.
Yes. Well, there's different trainings. I do trainings remotely, and there's a lot of trainings out there. And it's really about getting a good teacher. I would meditate more. I know Judith Orloff has a lot of great classes. I have classes, and you go with somebody you resonate with. And that you also should learn how to protect your energy. You should learn how to, just don't open up and do it on your own, because there's a lot that can make people go a little off sometimes, not saying all the time. If I didn't have my mother to guide me, I could have thought I was losing, going crazy. But you have to get a teacher to guide you. You're opening up into a different realm. You need to pray regularly. You need to connect to angels and guides and spirits and meditate, and then get more connected to your own soul. And I'm trying to demystify, spirituality, intuition. It's our natural part of our language. And to be a healer, you can get trained in Reiki. There's hands-on healing. There's therapeutic touch. There's a lot of ways that you can learn healing, and healing more naturally, healing with your spirit, and working with your aura. And there's tons of training out there. Great time to look at remote classes.
Exactly. So as we end, Carolyn, I want to end with commending you on your ability to honor your spirit in the way that you have. And even with everything you've been through, you chose to take it higher and view whatever you were experiencing as some type of spiritual initiation. I have to say, and I don't want to open up a can of worms here because it could be a whole other conversation, but that when I read in your book where you shared your horrific experience having surgery, my mouth dropped when I saw that you wrote in your book, "I can't breathe." And
Mm.
literally almost died in the hospital. Now we know those same words were uttered by George
Oh, I
Floyd.
can't hear you for some reason.
Um,
Oh, there it is.
Now we know that those same words were uttered by George Floyd as he was being brutally
Mm.
murdered. And those words, "I can't breathe," will be etched in our minds forever. But you wrote your book in 2016, and even though the context was different, you
Mm.
you also went through the experience of being treated horribly, a way in which you wouldn't treat an animal, as you say. So I saw this parallel when I was reading them. But how interesting
Mm.
that she said those words, 2016. We've just become familiar with the "I can't breathe" words of George Floyd. That's synchronistic in itself. And you really go into depths of what a nightmare situation that was for you. And you felt like you were even losing a part of your soul. But you still chose to do your spiritual work and take the energy higher, as difficult as that was. And when you came through the other side of what felt like a complete nightmare, you had many deep realizations. So I want to leave uh, with the listeners getting some kind of understanding because of what you write about in your book, that how it might help others on their difficult journey, or what you call the nexus point, which is a point on
Mhm.
the stage of life you must hit to transcend pain and suffering. We literally have just a minute or two. Leave us with some pearls. I
Yes.
want to tell everybody that Carolyn's book, Honor Your Spirit, is full of so many of them, but leave us with something that you think could be the takeaway for our listeners today.
Yes. So I Can Breathe was also honoring at the time Michael Brown, who was also killed that way, and that was the slogan back then. Was killed by the police, but and it was just the same time. I felt the same way, but I think that a lot of times dark energies or systems kill the breath, and it could be a lot of different things, different cultures, the Holocaust, the killing fields in Cambodia, like the kids, people at the border. There's different ways that the Trail of Tears, but I feel like we're all souls and we're all here to grow and learn. And if we can learn a lesson from that, I went to the other side and heard the divine, and that gave me more light. And I found my assignment. Next time I told him, I said, next time, don't kill me. Give me an email, a Gmail, Godmail. But, I just feel that if we listen to our spirit and honor us, no matter what happens to us, we'll know at the end of the day, we chose the highest road and did the highest calling, and that we will clear our own karma, will help humanity, will help ourselves, and will help the planet evolve.
Beautiful. So I want to thank you, Carolyn, for
Thank you.
this
Thanks.
day. So lovely having you. And for those that want to know more about you, what's the best website, or give us that.
I'm on Instagram. I'm Intuitive Solutions. You can follow me there, and on Facebook, I have How to Work with the Universe. It's a group where I talk about universal dialogue. My website's intuitivesoulhealing.com.
Beautiful, beautiful. So thank
Yeah.
you to our listeners for being here with us today. May you honor your spirit today and all the days that follow. Until we meet again, from my heart to yours, stay safe, stay present, stay kind.